What's going on, everyone? So I think the best thing that the San Antonio Spurs could have done was sign Chris Paul. I think that this is absolutely huge for the Spurs in a multitude of ways, right? One, you bring in an adult, you bring in a vet, you bring in a guy that can be an extension of the coach in Greg Popovich, a guy that has a history of really being able to mentor, develop, and help grow these guards. I mean, look at what SGA, how high he speaks of Chris Paul and what Chris Paul did for his game and his career. And then you look at the San Antonio Spurs, and they go and they draft Stephon Castle, who is supposed to be the point guard of the future for this team. Chris Paul, imagine what he would be able to do with Stephon Castle. You look at Vassell, right? Vassell is another guy that I think would be able to grow, learn, and mature in general from just being around Chris Paul and just the things that he sees, the way that his basketball mind works, the way that he can kind of get these guys to focus, buy in, and just look at the game differently than they currently do. It's a guy that has that effect and has that impact. Another big thing that Chris Paul does is really increases win percentages for teams. I mean, every place he's gone has been better by a significant margin, right? Chris Paul is a guy that San Antonio, they're probably not going to be competing for a top 5 pick with just Chris Paul on the roster by himself. So you look at the history of Chris Paul. Before Chris Paul, the Charlotte Hornets, right, were a 22% win rate. First season with Chris Paul, they jumped up to 46.3%. With the Clippers, they were 39%. Jump up 60.6%. Houston Rockets, 67.1%. They jump up to 79.3%. The Oklahoma City Thunder, 59.8%. They jump up to 61.1%. The Phoenix Suns, 46.6%. Jump up to 70.8%. And then the Golden State Warriors last year go from 53.7% and go up to 56.1%, which was the smallest margin. But nonetheless, still, every place he's gone has increased. And the San Antonio Spurs last year had a 26.8% win rate. So based on that, they're probably at least going to be winning 40 to 50% of their games. Now, it also depends on how, can Vassell step up better? Can, Castle actually make a significant impact right out the gate? And then Victor Wembanyama, who I want to talk about. The biggest thing that I think Chris Paul is going to do for the Spurs is unlock Victor Wembanyama. Victor was unbelievably impressive last season. He had all this hype, all this expectations, all this just pressure on his shoulders, and came in like, stop. Like, I'm him. And was incredibly impressive. Played 71 games, averaged just a hair under 30 minutes a game, went and gave you 21 points, just a hair under 11 rebounds, just a hair under 4 assists, 1.2 steals, 3.6 blocks. You can make an argument he's already a top 15 player. And then you add in that he's arguably, if not the best defensive player in the league. In my opinion, he is the best defensive player in the league. I think him and Anthony Davis are at the top. I know Rudy Gobert won the Defensive Player of the Year award, but we've seen even Marcus Smart a few years ago won the Defensive Player of the Year on the Celtics. It was more of like a team award rather than him, because there was 15 other guys that had a far better defensive rating and just across the board metrics than Marcus Smart did. But Boston was by far the best defensive team at that time. So it was kind of like he's the anchor, he's the guy, give it to him. Same thing with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Minnesota were just incredible and just dominant defensively. And it's like Rudy Gobert's the anchor of that defense, so he gets the award. Victor Wembanyama, in my opinion, I know he's a rookie. I know that doesn't really go favorable when you're talking about rookies. He should have won Defensive Player of the Year, in my opinion. I thought defensively he was fantastic. I think Anthony Davis should have also been in the conversation at least. But nonetheless, I digress. Point is, Victor Wembanyama had an incredible season. What Chris Paul is going to do for Victor Wembanyama, I think, is potentially terrifying. I wouldn't be shocked if Victor Wembanyama averages 30 plus next season, right? Again, he averaged 21.4 points a game. Chris Paul is a true point guard that is going to get Victor Wembanyama the ball every advantage point, every opportunity that he can. You don't think that Victor isn't going to get a better looks, better opportunity? I think his shooting percentage will go up, right? I think the shot attempts will go up. He averaged 16.7 attempts per game. I think he'll be probably around 18 to 20. I also think his percentage will go up just naturally because Chris Paul is going to be getting him the ball in his spots. Also, you have the natural progression of Victor Wembanyama, right? From year 1 to year 2, he'll have his growth and development. But I also think Chris Paul is going to be a huge factor because I don't think, one of the big things last year with the San Antonio Spurs was they didn't have a real playmaker. It was incredibly frustrating to watch the Spurs play and just see how clunky the offense was and at times there was just zero or to little ball movement, right? And on top of that, there were, multiple times a game where Victor Wembanyama might as well have not even been on the court. They would just completely phase him out. And he would have established position. There were times where he would be literally wide open. And I'm like, why aren't you do you not see that? The guy is, taller than a skyscraper. Pass him the ball. Chris Paul isn't going to miss those. Chris Paul isn't going to, phase out Victor Wembanyama at times. Chris Paul is going to make sure if Victor has established position, Chris Paul is going to get him the basketball. And that's why I think what Chris Paul is, the impact that Chris Paul is going to have, in my opinion, is immeasurable, right? I know some people look at it. Most Spurs fans are excited about Chris Paul and understand the gist of it, right? Even when I made the video about Chris Paul going to Spurs, everyone, it was pretty unanimous that everyone was like, oh, this was a great move, right? But there are some people that are a little skeptical, not about him coming, but him getting $11 million a year and also him just being around for 1 year. But 1 year is the difference between a player being a star to an all-star or an all-star to a superstar. That is a huge, SGA, just out of left field became a superstar. 1 year he's, this guy seems okay to, oh no, who is this guy? Right? Jalen Brunson, went from Dallas to he's a good player. Right? Oh no, he's he's a superstar, or maybe not a superstar, but a real star. He is excellent, right? Again, a year can do a lot and you can have an impact. And you're talking about, it's not like a year in passing. It's not like a normal job where it's I worked with this guy for a year. He sat across from me, but you're not, there's not the communication. There's not, he's doing his work, you're doing your work. And there's not much interaction outside of the break room or, as you guys are walking out together, or maybe you go have a drink after work or something like that, right? No, you're talking about the game of basketball where Chris Paul is going to be with these guys 24/7, 365 almost, and actively working with them. It's not just I'm with these guys in passing. No, he's going to be in training camp and, in preseason and throughout the course of the season and all the practices they have and so on and so forth. He is going to be incredibly active in getting these guys in line to the best of their ability. And look, just because he signed a 1-year deal doesn't mean he won't sign again. Right? It doesn't mean if the Spurs are kind of hey, this was great, right? There's not really anybody let's see what another year could do. Chris Paul could easily stick around another year. So it's not just because he signed a 1-year deal, that means that's it, right? It doesn't mean I guess you're never going to, get Chris Paul again. No, he could stick around longer. But I just think that the Chris Paul effect is going to be massive for this team. I really do. I think that they have a very good young nucleus, right? I think they have a very good young core. And they just need that guy to kind of unlock it. And I think Chris Paul is the guy that's going to be, say there's several doors, say there's 2, 3 doors, right? I think Chris Paul will be the guy that unlocks the first, maybe even the second door, to where they are, going from a bottom feeding team to, oh no, wait a minute, this team might be legit. Like this team might be something, right? Like, like OKC 2 years ago or whatever, right? Where it was like, oh, hang on a second, like this team might actually be pretty good, right? Like that's kind of what I think you might see with the Spurs, and then kind of take that jump maybe the following year or two after that. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, a past question to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? You excited for Chris Paul to be on the Spurs? Do you think that, yes, he's going to have an insane impact? Do you think, no, not really much, not going to impact much? How do you feel? Whatever your thoughts are. Whether it's good, bad, somewhere in between, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. Helps me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.